Hi, I'm Vivienne.
And I'm Jason.
And this is Burger of the Week. Each week, we will discuss an episode of the Fox animated series Bob's Burgers, and we'll create a themed burger of the week based on the episode. This week, we will begin with the pilot episode, Human Flesh, and we'll also discuss the unaired pilot. The link to the unaired pilot will be in the show notes if you've never watched it and you're curious to see the changes. Because they're pretty big animation-wise. Like, they're really different.
The animation is very different. It's
very,
a little
very different.
unsettling at times.
Yeah, it doesn't feel at all like the same show. I wonder if it would have been as popular if it had kept that same animation. Anyway, if you're not familiar with Bob's Burgers, it follows the Belcher family, Bob, Linda, and their children Tina, Jean, and Louise, and their adventures running a restaurant in a seaside town. Which is, the location is never actually disclosed. We're not sure, but I think someone found out it was actually like New Jersey or something like that.
Someplace near the ocean.
Yeah, someplace near the ocean. It could be the Jersey Shore, why not?
I'm thinking more Maine.
Yeah, okay. They have a lobster fest eventually.
They did.
You know, Maine is a lobster place, right?
They have.
They have lobster.
Seafood.
Right. So Human Flesh aired on January 9th, 2011, and was written by the creator, Lauren Bouchard, and executive producer Jim Dauterive, and directed by Alan Chun. So Jason, you and I are familiar with Lauren Bouchard's previous work as the co-creator of Home Movies.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're a bigger fan of that show than I am, but
Love home movies.
It is really funny. He also wrote, produced, and edited for a show called Dr. Kat's Professional Therapist, which ran for 6 seasons. I've never seen it. I know that it has squiggle vision, which kind of turns me off from watching the show.
It's difficult.
At all.
Because the first season of Home Movies also used squiggle vision. And it's very distracting.
Yeah, I think it would really bug me. Like, it might give me kind of a headache. But I've heard that it's such a funny show. So I don't know, listener, if you've watched the show and you love it and you think I absolutely need to watch it right now, let me know. I think it's very conversational too,
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of sitting and talking. Like West Wing is walking and talking, and Dr. Katz is sitting and talking.
Yeah. He also created a show called Lucy, Daughter of the Devil, which had an 11-episode run on Adult Swim. I've never heard of it before I looked him up. But I did look at the episode list, and the pilot was called He's Not the Messiah, He's a DJ. So that kind of makes me want to watch it. Like, that sounds good. That sounds funny.
That's a great title for an episode.
I don't know. It's probably kind of dark, but I'm okay with that. Yeah, so Lauren Bouchard wrote 3 episodes in the first season of Bob's Burgers, and then he goes on to write a couple more over the series, but he doesn't seem to be, like, consistently writing at all.
Now, while it's true he's not writing every episode, he's very involved in the music.
Oh yeah, big time.
He's huge into music. You may not realize it, but almost every episode has a little bit of music in it, specifically related to what's going on. Needless to say, Lauren Bouchard is still very involved in every episode of the show.
Oh, absolutely. He's, 100% in. Jim Dauterive, the other credited writer for this episode, was an executive producer and writer for King of the Hill. Or as I like to call it, Hank of the Hill, or King of the Hanks.
King of the Hanks. Hank of the Hanks.
And yes, the character of Bill Dauterive, Hank's kind of sad friend.
He's just misunderstood.
Yeah, was named after him. He co-wrote the first 2 episodes of Bob's Burgers, but he hasn't been credited as a writer since.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he maybe not a big fan of writing, maybe just kind of likes being, in the in-charge kind of situation. Fired. Oh my god. He's still the executive producer.
Oh, okay.
And I searched for Alan Chun's, the director's, other credits, but my search came up empty. So you never know. Maybe he just decided to do it one time for fun. For funsies.
Hey, it was a good episode.
Yeah, no, he did a good job.
Yep.
So one of the things that the two of us love about Bob's Burgers is the chemistry between the voice actors. So let's talk about them briefly. H. John Benjamin voices Bob Belcher, and he's worked with the creator Lauren Bouchard several times before on shows like Home Movies, where he did the voice of Coach McGurk.
Coach McGurk the jerk. Yep.
And he was also a voice on Lucy, Daughter of the Devil. I'm not sure exactly who he was. I think he was the voice of the devil, though. I'm pretty sure he was the dad, you know. So maybe he just likes playing dads.
Or father figures.
Yeah, father figures, but like a little bit weird father figures.
Yeah, I'd say Coach McGurk is a very weird father figure.
Oh, big time. He's well known for voicing Sterling Archer on FX's really great show, hilarious show, Archer.
Which incidentally did have a crossover episode with Bob's Burgers.
Yes, it did. It had a great one.
It
That
did.
was hilarious. We're going to have to do that one.
Oh, we'll do it eventually.
We're going to have to just cross over to Archer for just like one episode.
Just for an episode.
Just for fun. John Roberts voices Linda Belcher. He's a comedian, and he's been a guest star on Archer before and on Gravity Falls, and he's done some really funny YouTube videos, which we just watched prior to this. It's basically Linda, but like slightly more offensive Linda. Dan Mintz voices Tina Belcher. He's a comedian and a writer, and he's currently working on Son of Zorn. It seems like most of his credits are writing credits on Wikipedia, so I'm guessing that's something that he really enjoys, and he, you know, kind of does that more often.
He really likes to stand up too.
Yeah.
It's basically, if you've never watched it, it's basically just Tina.
Yeah.
Just really awkward stand up.
Eugene Merman voices Gene Belcher, and he's done a lot of stand-up comedy. It seems like that's kind of his bag. I mean, he's hilarious as Gene, so I could see him being fantastic as a stand-up. I've never actually seen any of his stand-up comedy, though.
Yeah, me neither.
I'll have to check it out. That's on the list of things to do.
Yeah, I wonder if he's just like Dan Mintz and is basically just Gene the entire time.
You know what? I'd like to see Gene do stand-up comedy.
But
That sounds
Gene
good.
works because he's a small child. I don't know whether...
Oh. So a grown man
Yeah, I
might
don't
be a little
know.
weird.
But then again, you know, Dan Mintz is a grown man and he's still kind of awkward.
Yeah, you know. You don't grow out of awkwardness
That's
necessarily.
true, you don't, no. Not when you're that awkward.
No. And lastly, Kristen Schaal voices Louise Belcher. She has a lot of credits.
She has a ridiculous amount of credits.
A ton of credits. What I know her best from was she played Mel on the Flight of the Conchords show, and I remember watching her because she was such an awkward, like, fangirl of the duo, and it was hilarious. And she's currently working on The Last Man on Earth.
Mm-hmm. I've watched about half this first season, and I do love her character. She is fantastic.
Oh, she's great.
I love how she pretty much has such a unique voice that she doesn't really change it for anything that she's in.
No. Louise's voice is just Kristen Schaal's regular voice.
Yeah.
Which it seems like pretty much that's the cast except for John Roberts.
Yeah, that's true.
He's the only one I think who has to stretch, you know, and do a different voice there.
But that's a voice that John Roberts has been doing for such a long time that...
Clearly very comfortable with it.
Yeah. And John Benjamin, of course, doesn't change his voice for the main cast. He does play a few side characters, and you can kind of tell who it is, but it's still pretty similar to just John Benjamin.
Oh, yeah. You can tell when he kind of lowers his voice or pitches it up a little bit to play, like, one of the teachers in the school at Wagstaff, or, you know, like a small child or something like that.
In the case of Home Movies, he pinches his nose and talks when he plays Jason.
Oh, right. I always forget that he plays Jason.
Yeah.
That little pig-nosed kid.
Yeah.
Oh, little Jason.
Little Jason Pignose. That's good. You just brought up all these painful memories of my childhood.
Oh, God. Your nose is fine. All right. So let's get to the episode in question here. Human Flesh.
In this episode, Bob attempts to rally his family to work extra hard for their grand reopening to make it a successful weekend for their business. Linda is upset that Bob forgot their anniversary, and their business is put under investigation after Louise spreads rumors that their burgers are made with human remains from the crematorium next door. Linda must charm the health inspector, her ex-fiancé, into closing the investigation.
Oh, that Louise.
She's always up to no good.
Yeah, up to no good. All right, so Every week, I'd like to point out what the store next door was in the credits and what the extermination van was. So the store next door this week was PFETA, PFETA, I don't know. It's a clear rip on PETA, because there's a sign in the store window that says meat is murder, which is interesting because we're not going to have an animal rights group in this show.
For another couple episodes, at least.
Yeah, not until episode 3, actually. Yep. So I guess they're planting those roots there, right now.
Or maybe they're kind of saying that, animal cruelty is bad, so maybe it's okay to use human flesh instead.
Oh, yeah, totally. They're endorsing cannibalism.
Right.
Clearly.
I mean, it's better than eating, cute and cuddly animals.
Oh, humans can be cute and cuddly, Jason.
That's true.
You're proof. All right.
Oh, my God.
The extermination van is rats all, folks. And I'm pretty sure it stays that one for most of the first season. I don't think they actually change it too often.
Oh, really? Okay. We'll have to pay attention to that. Rats all, folks.
Rats all! And the burger of the day, there's 2 of them actually
there
in this
episode.
Of them. Bob comes up with new baconings.
And he loves it.
I don't know why he thinks it's so funny.
Because Bob loves all of his creations. He thinks his jokes are amazing.
That's true. It's a very simple burger. Like, we'll start to see a lot more interesting burgers from Bob's.
They get pretty complex.
Yeah, because this one just comes with bacon.
And that's just a bacon burger.
Yeah, it's just a bacon burger.
Nice try, Bob.
Louise comes up with the child molester, which is just a regular cheeseburger.
But it comes with candy.
But it comes with candy. She sticks a lollipop in the top of the burger and puts a couple candies on the side. Yeah. So we'll just get into our discussion of the unaired pilot and the aired pilot. We'll start to talk about the differences that we noticed while watching. And
some of the changes that they've decided to make.
Yeah, creative changes in cast.
Changes in cast, yes. Yeah, not voice cast, but...
No. But cast.
Also, it's good to note that the unaired pilot is significantly shorter than what you did see on television. It was approximately 13 minutes instead of the 23 or so for the pilot. So there's some differences there. Yeah,
the ending makes a big difference in my mind when you're watching the unaired pilot and you get a very different feel of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't end on such a happy note. And I think part of that is just because it wasn't as long
for sure
as the aired pilot.
Not as complex. They kind of fleshed out a bit more of the story in the first episode with the pilot. They added a few elements and everything is very simple in the unaired pilot, which makes sense because it's kind of like a proof of concept that they sent to the network. Just kind of hey, this is our show. This is what we kind of want it to be like. This is the family. This is the style. And thankfully, they didn't stick with the animation style.
Oh my gosh. It's so different. From the Belchers to the backgrounds to the buildings, the lines are not as neatly drawn, or maybe the outlines are just not as thick.
And obviously it's rough, but it doesn't really reflect. I don't know. It gives off a very different feel.
Yes, it does. And the Belcher family... and just the characters in general look much more unattractive.
They're kind of gross. I think they're kind of
gross looking.
A little
and they
grimy.
Have weird phallic shaped noses.
Their noses are so long.
And they hang down over their mouths. I know. Which is really bizarre because when you're watching them, I'm not sure if you see their teeth. I don't think you see their teeth in the unaired pilot. But
when I'm watching their mouths, all I see is their nose.
Yeah, it's just hanging out in front of them like some sort of deflated balloon. You know, when you get the balloons from the clown, weird and thin shaped, and it's just deflated. It's like that thing hanging out in front of their mouth. It's very awkward.
And that's not what you want to watch when you're watching a cartoon. You don't want to be focusing on a nose.
And I also noticed that there's no Jimmy Pestos across the street.
Yeah, I saw that. So there's no competition yet. Maybe they hadn't fleshed out that part of the rivalry.
Yeah, except it's in the aired pilot.
It is. You can see him looking out the window at the beginning, and that's what he's... We are having our grand reopening. It's very important. We need to... It's
Labor Day weekend.
Labor Day weekend,
that's
right.
What it is. Yeah.
And he needed to beat Jimmy Pestos. He needed to make more money than him.
Yep. It's interesting, the idea that they might have never had someone like Jimmy Pesto, because I think he adds such a great element to the show, and there's so many good episodes of their rivalry.
Yeah.
And also with just Tina, having this huge crush on Jimmy Jr. And the show would have been very different,
Very
I think,
different.
without that competitor like Bob's
and it really helps flesh
nemesis.
out. Well, it helps flesh out the city as well, or the town.
Mm-hmm.
Having so many characters and having somebody so important right across the street really brings a lot of the stories to help stay centered around the restaurant, because you don't really need to leave the restaurant if some of your stories are happening right next door. Yeah. So it's kind of helps keeping everything together.
Mm-hmm. And I also noticed in the unaired pilot that the buildings are really tall and thin. Like, they're already tall and fairly thin. Like, Bob's Burgers, the storefront and their apartment is quite tall, quite thin. But the one in the unaired pilots, all of the buildings are like that. And it kind of gives them an appearance of storefronts in San Francisco or right. homes in San Francisco. Okay. So it kind of gives it a different feel. And I think if they had kept with that kind of theme of very tall, thin buildings, then people would have started guessing, oh, is it San Francisco? Is that where they live? It just felt more specific. Okay. It didn't feel less homey or anything. I mean, I watched Full House and that was San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
And big, tall, thin house. It just felt really specifically San Francisco to me.
Okay.
I'm saying that as a person who has never visited San Francisco, but that's
sure.
what I associate with that city.
Tall buildings squished together.
So that's pretty much the big changes as far as animation goes that I noticed. Mm-hmm. Other than, of course, the animation's just not as smooth as well. But right. that's, of course, budget, right?
It's rough, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Home Movies and Bob's Burgers were both created using Flash, Macromedia Flash, or as it is now today, Adobe Flash. The first season of Bob's was using Flash. It's interesting to know that just software you can get off the shelf, anybody that software that everyone was making games on, Newgrounds and all those dinky little Flash games, can create a show like Bob's Burgers or Home Movies or whatnot. So it's kind of neat.
Wow, Flash, really?
Yeah, they just use Flash. Yeah,
that's
pretty
so
interesting.
Weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
Going back to the character, Bob he's a lot greasier looking to me, and they did mention that in the unaired pilot. They talk about how he's kind of got greasy hair and whatever, but it's like he's not wearing a shirt the entire episode.
Oh no, he's wearing a little
wife beater. Yeah, that's so unfortunate.
And then he's got the apron over it, but it kind of gives him this creepy like butcher vibe.
Yeah,
not a big fan.
Yeah, no.
It's sort of like, okay, if you're gonna have a hairy guy like that, cover yourself up, bud.
Yeah.
So I'm glad
they threw a t-shirt on him.
Yeah, it's good that they threw a t-shirt on him. We just don't need to see that chest hair all over the place. I noticed that Jean and Louise sound a little bit different.
They do.
Their voices don't seem either as...
They're not as animated.
Yeah, they're not as animated.
They're not lively.
And they don't seem as high-pitched and lively.
To me, they sound almost like not slurring together, but their voices kind of run together not as smoothly as, I don't know, that I noticed, obviously, even in the next episode or continuing on almost immediately. To me, I notice it more with Louise than I do with Jean.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether they just weren't comfortable with the character that they were going to be portraying yet.
I'm not sure what the reason is there. It could have been that maybe they're doing kind of voice acting for the first time or one of the first times, and they just need to get their feet wet, Mm-hmm. So they're just kind of jumping into it, and they still have a little time to work with that character and figure out what kind of voice they're going to have, what kind of attitude that they're going to have.
Sure. And Bob sounds great.
Yeah.
Linda sounds great.
Yeah, Linda sounds fine.
Hugo sounds fine.
Yeah. Yes.
Ron sounds fine. I mean, Ron Lynch, who plays Ron in the pilot episode, is very comfortable with voice acting because he was in Home Movies as well. It didn't take them very long to get used to, or to get comfortable with their voices and the voice acting, if that's what the problem was. Almost, like we said, almost immediately in the next episode, you can tell there's a very big difference.
They're just slightly more monotone, because Gene has a very obvious cadence to his voice. Like, he just speaks in a specific way that I've gotten so used to over the course of the series, that looking back at the pilot episode, he sounds a little bit more monotone. He doesn't tend to have, like, the big kind of outbursts that we're used to having.
Yeah.
And Louise just sounds a little bit more muted, a little bit quieter.
She's not quite the firecracker that we're used to these days.
Yeah, she's sort of like a quiet schemer in this first episode. A little bit less of a...
but she's still there. You can still see her because the writing is still on point. So
On that note, I noticed that in the unaired pilot, and a little bit less so in the aired pilot, but Linda didn't have a ton of interaction with her children in the first episode, so she kind of comes off as a bit of a nagging wife.
Okay.
Which is sort of a trope I don't really care for on TV, of like the
let's pigeonhole the mom into like the bad guy almost. Yeah,
and like the long-suffering husband who has to deal with this wife who just nags him about stuff
and
all the time.
And she's stuck in this relationship that married to this guy who doesn't make any money, but she's trapped and she just resents everybody. And
who's not very romantic, which I think they really managed to fix in the
pilot.
Aired pilot.
Absolutely, for sure.
There's still less interaction with certain members of her family. Like, she doesn't have a big interaction with Jean, but in the aired pilot, she has a bit more time with Louise and a bit more time with Tina.
She does have more time with Tina. It's a little gross, but she does have better interaction.
It's kind of gross.
Which isn't there in the unaired pilot. So,
well, the unaired pilot I noticed... And also the aired pilot, because it is quite different from what the show becomes. But the comedy, like the humor, is just a little bit more adult.
Yeah.
And almost a little bit more offensive. Like there's a moment where in the unaired pilot where Louise is talking about how her parents are grinding the meat downstairs. And she says, they're really grinding the meat. And like she makes this little circle on her one hand, and then she's like poking through the circle to penetrate it. So clearly making like a sex, gesture. And it's a lot more obscene than the gesture that they end up going with.
Yeah.
They end up going with her just like doing a little thrusting motion, which is still like, okay, why is Louise saying that?
But it's a bit more on point than doing the little crude
I think
finger.
It might have been harder to get past the censors. They might have said something about you need to change that gesture because it's too crude.
Maybe. I also think it might have been them trying to compete with the style of shows that are on the same night. Sunday night, Family Guy and The Simpsons. And The Simpsons has been getting a bit more out there. The same with Family Guy, of course, because they're both they can be crude, but Family Guy obviously more so. So they might have thought that they needed to make it a bit more shocking than what they ended up doing, just to fit in with that crowd.
Yeah, which goes with the original concept of the show. When they pitched it, they were planning on making the Belchers a cannibal family. Right? So in the first episode, they're accused of being cannibals, but they were actually going to have them be that. In the original
it would have
conception,
changed things up quite a lot.
Until the studio told Lauren Bouchard that he didn't need to add that in, that he already had something good there, and that just wasn't the kind of path that he needed to go. Which I think is a very good choice, because that show would not have lasted.
Yeah, it's just nice to have a very basic family, simple dealing with family issues, and not have anything obscene like... It's a normal, blue-collar family, but they're also cannibals. Whoa, crazy. What? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad, because it really brings them back down to earth. They're just a blue-collar family trying to make ends meet, trying to live their American dream, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, the biggest change in the unaired pilot is obviously the change of, from Daniel to how we know this character now is Tina. So originally the Belchers were going to have two sons. It was voiced by the same actor, Dan Mintz, but...
And the voice was identical.
The voice was completely identical. And there was a couple little things that they obviously had to change. Like there was a joke where Jean said, kill the pig, and Daniel's like, why me? And he goes, because you have glasses and your balls are weird. Like, you can't say that to Tina.
No, that's another kind of a bit obscene humor that they threw in there. Like, yeah, you have weird balls. And I mean, it goes off of my crotch is itchy. That was the whole issue with Tina/Daniel.
Which is still a story for a story, I say, with quote marks. Or air quotes.
Yeah.
For Tina that I'm not a big fan
no,
of.
Me neither.
I think it's pretty stupid.
It's kind of crude.
And it's kind of gross, and it doesn't add anything to her character.
I mean, it gives you the Linda moment with her, like, come on, show me, show me.
Show me your weird itchy crotch.
Yeah.
Yes, please, child, show me your genitals
and then, of course,
public.
Louise and Jean all lean in. They're like, yeah, let's see.
No, please don't look at your sister's crotch. That's weird. And there's another joke about autism that they kept in the aired pilot where Louise says, you're the worst kind of autistic, and Tina seems to actually believe that she's like, autistic.
Yeah, I'm autistic. No, you're not.
No, she's not.
And then they throw in the Rain Man joke, like dropping the toothpicks. And
oh, is that from Rain Man?
That's from Rain Man, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Because Dustin Hoffman is at the diner, and the lady drops like a whole big thing of toothpicks, and
he's able to
like,
count all of them?
200 or he's like 87 or something. Just immediately.
And they end up counting them to verify this number?
No, they don't verify it, but
well, he could have just been saying a number then. They could have dropped some, and then there's like 200, and he says 87, and everyone's like, shit, he totally knows what he's talking about.
And, of course, they do that joke in Bob's Burgers, and there's 3. There's 3 toothpicks. Yeah, there's 3 toothpicks. And then Tina she says 100, and Bob is just...
No, there's 3.
So... You're not a fan of the autistic joke, which is...
No, I just don't really think it's funny, I guess. I don't really see how it would be funny. Maybe that's just me not understanding it, but...
I think it's just going off of how awkward and bizarre Tina is, and also how her siblings pick on her. Because that's something that brother and sister I feel like they're likely to do. Like, hey, you're adopted, you're autistic, you're,
I don't know. My brother never called me autistic.
No, that's fair.
But... No, or told me I was adopted.
Yeah, me neither. But
he just told me to go away.
Yeah. So I mean, it's hit or miss. I'm not a huge fan of it either, but I can kind of see what they were getting at, and it's also kind of funny to see Bob so incredulous at Tina when she says 100, and it's just 3. It's just. And he's just completely baffled, like, wait, what?
And
there's just 3.
When Jean afterwards drops another one, so there's 4 now on the ground, but she repeats 3.
She still says 3.
But it's funny because Tina's terrible at math, which we're going to find out later.
That's true.
So she's really bad at math, so it's almost like they're laying
a bit of foreshadowing there?
Yeah, a little bit.
It's pretty deep.
I doubt it.
Yeah, I don't know.
But still, you could work with it.
For sure.
Yeah, so clearly they were going for a little bit of a more crude humor in the first episode and maybe a little bit the first season, and they kind of steer away from that and go into something that's a little bit more family friendly. Yeah,
they do. Kind of like the next episode. I'm not really going to go into it, but the next episode does have a bit of crudeness in it as well with their parents.
There's still moments of it all throughout the series, but I find it's
toned down a lot, for sure.
Yeah, a lot more family friendly. Like, there's a joke in the unaired pilot that Linda makes. She makes a comment that she and Bob might have sex in the basement while grinding the meat, because she says something like, oh, well, we're not going to be up, too soon, or we might be down there for a while. Because it's our
anniversary.
Oh, God. And then Bob just replies, ew, we don't do that anymore.
And then she says, well, why did I shave?
Oh, good God. Yes, this entire part is cut from the aired pilot, which I'm happy with, because I really feel like the pilot that they ended up going with has Bob and Linda a little bit more...
They're more of a happy couple and in love, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Like, they're clearly... Bob is obviously going through a tough weekend because things are... they're trying to get their business back up and running, and they really want to have a successful weekend.
Yeah, they're struggling financially.
Yeah,
big
hard. Time.
That's a running theme in the show.
But Bob is just, he's having a tough weekend, so I can understand why he's sort of forgetful about their anniversary, and maybe he's not as affectionate to her as per usual, but saying something like, "Oh, we don't do that," and getting kind of grossed out by her, and her making comments about him having greasy hair and stuff just makes you wonder, well, why are you two even married?
Yeah. And we know that they have a great relationship. They have so many great episodes about Bob and Linda being fantastic together. Like, Bob table dancing for Linda.
Yeah, doing a little striptease, magic miking her.
And even at the end of the pilot episode, he shows that he made an effort to learn how to kiss less wetly, less sloppily.
With less moisture.
Less moisture, yes.
Less moisture, yes.
He got internet tips.
I wonder what those kind of tips are. Because, you know, there are a lot of WikiHow pages. Like, at one point, I got into basically, like, a WikiHow spiral.
Okay.
And I ended up finding a page, and it was, like, WikiHow to grind with someone, like, dancing.
Oh, boy.
So, there must be a page out there that gives you, like, kissing tips. But I'm just trying to imagine Bob practicing. And he would probably be the type to, like, practice on a random piece of fruit. Or, like,
and he'd probably give it a voice, too.
Oh,
he'd
yes,
probably
he would.
Yeah.
And he would pretend it's Linda. That would be weird.
Yeah.
But
kind of cute.
He's putting an effort for his
wife.
It
shows that he puts the effort in. And it's important to see that somebody is putting the effort in because that makes you like the relationship more.
Yes, you root for them because of that.
Yeah. And also, it's a family. You want a family to be a happy family.
Mm-hmm. And the unaired pilot really just abruptly ends. Linda asks Bob to come inside because he's talking to himself, sort of staring in the window of the store and telling himself how much he's a failure. And a woman pulls up with a van and asks Bob if she and her group of adventurous eaters can try their human flesh burgers. And that's just the end of the episode, which is also the end, well, sort of the end of the episode that it did air.
Yep.
But we get that extra
It wraps up the story, and then they add a little bit extra.
Yeah, and then they just have that little moment at Wonder Wharf where they're all on the Ferris wheel, and the kids are up there all on one sort of seat, and then you've got Bob and Linda, and they're making out, and then Louise, of course, is like, "Will you start this thing? I'm getting traumatized over here."
Yeah, and Jean says, "Ooh, Mom's getting handsy."
Ooh. I think it's really sweet.
It is. It's kind of cute.
It makes me root for them.
Yeah.
It is very nice.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for the differences between the unaired pilot and the pilot.
Yes, we meet Hugo in the unaired pilot, but because the aired pilot was longer, we actually get a chance to meet Mort, and we get a chance to see a little bit more of the townspeople, although we don't see a lot of the characters that will eventually be reoccurring, like Teddy or
some of the
Jimmy
classmates.
Pesto or some of the classmates,
right.
The owners of that art store. You know, we get to see just kind of like background townspeople. So this is the episode where we find out that Hugo and Linda were briefly engaged, which will play a bit of a role in subsequent episodes because you'll notice that like Hugo has this sort of
animosity.
Yes, he has that an animosity for Bob. He just dislikes him entirely. He's always sort of picking on him and trying to find every little fault in his restaurant cleanliness.
Well, he is the health inspector.
He is the health inspector.
With his partner, Ron.
Yes. Ron looks like a broccoli stalk. He's just so tall and his hair is so big.
Ron the broccoli stalk.
And Hugo is just so much smaller.
He's tiny, yeah.
He's so tiny.
It's great.
But I do kind of love Hugo, as terrible as he can be. He's just ridiculous, and I think it's funny. So, I'm still a fan of his.
Hugo hears the rumor that the restaurant is using human flesh.
Yes. Which I wonder who reported that. I'm going to guess the teacher.
Probably the teacher. Yeah.
Most likely the teacher. But yes, Louise later will convince Linda to kind of charm her ex-fiancé into getting him to take down the big sign or just stop the investigation. She's trying to get him to get off their backs, essentially.
Right, and let's go back to that sign because the sign that says may contain human flesh is such a hilarious sign to me because somebody had to design a sign specifically for the situation. So somebody designed a logo with a person in between buns.
Yeah, they had that prepared.
They had that ready.
The health inspection committee, whatever, they had that.
They probably have a lot of those. That's a little disturbing to me.
Yeah. Yes.
Moving on past Hugo.
So we do get to meet Mort in this pilot episode.
Who owns the crematorium next door.
Yes, he owns the crematorium next door. And Gene ends up delivering a burger to him because he's too embarrassed to, of course, go and get it himself because the sign is up now.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be seen eating at a restaurant that may serve human flesh.
Yes, especially while he owns a crematorium, owns a funeral home. He's not going to want to head over there.
It's conflict of interest.
Yes, of course, He's the supplier. No, I'm kidding.
Well, that ends up being the fear later on in the episode, that he ends up supplying the corpses to Bob's Burgers next door.
Mm-hmm. Except he's pretty chill about the whole thing. He just kind of plays it off like, oh, I got fired from this other job because I was giving the restaurants human flesh.
And then, wait, that is a terrible thing to tell people when their restaurant is under investigation for serving
please don't
human
make
flesh.
jokes like that, Mort. You're terrible at this.
Yeah, he's good.
Also, the weirdest thing. Okay, who has this? Like, what kind of funeral home has that weird thing where it opens up on the sidewalk and just your, like, casket can lift up?
Just comes right up.
Like it's some sort of, like, light and music show. What is that all about?
Maybe it's because the buildings are so close together that they can't.
There's no alleyway.
But there is an alleyway. We know there is behind the store, because that's frequently a shot that we see. So I think it's just, creative license.
Yeah, it's just creative license. Because
just like, hey, let's have something ridiculous happen.
It's clearly not there in the rest of the series. So it was just like a funny thing that they were going to do. But it always kind of pulls me out for a moment where I think,
wait a minute, why is that there?
Who has that?
Creative
is that
license.
A thing? Could you do that? Because, like, weird corpse elevator, Anyway, and that rolls in, and then poor Linda, she thinks it's a gift from Bob for their anniversary. Oh, honey,
she's convinced that he remembered, and he's just joking around and saying, I forgot, but he really did. Yeah. And that is not a gift.
No, we're going to learn over the series that Bob is just not great at anniversary gifts or Valentine's Day gifts.
Or remembering dates in general.
Yeah, he's not the best at that.
That's okay, we forgive him. He works hard to support his family.
Poor Linda, she opens up the casket, and of course it's a dead body. And one of my favorite lines from this pilot is said by Hugo. He gets on his phone immediately, and he's like, hello, the media? I just die because, oh my good God.
It's like he's got one direct line to every media outlet ever. Yeah. He just has to call one number, and it's just the media.
It's everybody.
Hello, the media.
He's terrible, but I love him anyway.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
And then we get to see a nice angry mob coming to protest.
Of course.
And I wrote down a few of the signs that they ended up having because I thought they were fantastic. Like, I would love to see a protest with these kind of signs.
Hey, people protesting. Sometimes they come up with the best things. They
really do.
They're creative people.
Yeah.
Some people may not even care about the issue. They just have a great sign idea. They just need to go out there and promote it.
Yep. So one of them was ham burgers, not him burgers, which was cute. One of them was don't taste me, bro.
I love that because just, don't tase me, bro, but...
Oh, God. And then keep the me out of meat. Ew. And I think my favorite is don't put our sons between your buns.
That is fantastic.
That's a great one.
The one great thing about having a show based around a burger restaurant is all of the bun jokes you can make. And they're all the same, but they're funny every time.
Yeah.
And of course, good. Tina's infatuation with butts. Gene coming out of the bathroom and... Oh. Do I have any toilet paper on my buns?
Oh, yeah. All the bun puns.
Yeah. Bun puns.
Oh, cute. Yes, and then Bob will have a nice little semi-inspirational speech at the end.
Which goes downhill pretty quickly.
Yeah, a lot of his inspirational speeches kind of go down.
Starts so strong.
So strong. And then, of course, gets misinterpreted as him defending cannibalism. So we then find out that Hugo's been delaying the test because he holds a grudge against Bob for stealing his woman. Mm-hmm. And then Ron finally convinces him to do the test, and they figure out, of course, it's just grade A beef or whatever. There's no human remains, no human flesh in there, none at all. which is great. Everything goes back to normal, but Bob still gets the opportunity to charge $50 for
$50 for a burger.
Human burgers,
Mhm.
you know?
Because the bus full of old ladies with, like, they have an adventurous eating club. They're like, we'd like to try that. It's the same lady who was in the episode earlier when she saw the sign on the window saying, I'd try that.
Yep.
There's no line. I wonder if she'd only try because there's no line, but you find out that, you know, she's got some spark left in her.
Interest.
Yes.
It's weird, but it's interest. Do you think you'd ever pay that much for a burger?
I don't know.
That's $50 is like, that's a lot of money.
It's got to be a
burger.
really good burger.
Yeah, but what kind of burger do you think
I know that, like,
kind of price tag?
$1,000 burgers exist.
What?
Like, I've watched YouTube videos on them.
Okay, what are they made out of? Gold?
Sure. You laugh, but one of the ingredients of one of the most expensive burgers is, in fact, gold leaf. It also includes saffron, beluga caviar, white truffle, Canadian lobster, black truffle brie, Kobe beef, and New Zealand venison.
Wow.
And it actually is around, I think it says $1,700. So
what?
It's an expensive burger. It's not the most expensive burger that's out there, surprisingly. There's one that's apparently 777 pounds and is about $5,000. So, yeah. There are expensive burgers out there, but Bob can just get away with his $50 one.
Man, he could have charged more.
He probably could have charged more, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
But Bob
that is insanity.
He's not greedy.
Never pay that much for food.
Yeah. I mean, it'd probably be really tasty.
Away. Well, that pretty much segues us right into creating our burger of the week. Basically, in this little segment, I guess we'll call it, we're going to come up with a parody burger, like a themed burger of the week. We're not actually going to cook a burger because, I mean, this is a podcast and it is not a visual medium.
We could pretend we cooked a burger.
Oh, we could just make a lot of clanging
noises. Can you hear it sizzling?
Sizzle.
Ooh, the fat burnt me. Ouch.
No. We'll just come up with something really kind of silly and then figure out what ingredients we would put on it if it was a real burger.
And if you guys have any better ideas, then let us know.
Seriously, you guys could come up with some really great stuff. All right.
Wait, like coming up with a burger would be that hard, which is like impossible to do.
All right, so Jason, did you write down any ideas? Because I feel like you told me what yours was.
I told you what mine was.
I know, and I feel like it's the clear winner, so I have to go first just so I'm not shamed afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, so the ones I came up with...
Oh, ones. You've got multiples.
Yeah, the ones.
Putting me to shame.
The many I came up with. Were want eyes with that, which is just really dumb.
A burger that comes with
and
fries?
I'm guessing... No, want eyes with that. So, like, on the burger, either you'd have to, like, cook them in, but still keep them fairly visible, like eyeballs. Which I think would be weird, because no one wants their food looking at them, you know?
You know what you could do?
What?
You could slice a hard-boiled egg.
Oh.
In, like, a couple slices, so they kind of look like eyeballs.
But we're imagining that this is, like, the human burgers that they're pretending to serve on the show.
Oh.
So, I mean,
Gross.
don't eat these at home, because you're going to have to, like...
Don't cook these.
Cut up some people, and that's just illegal.
That's also
creepy.
Gross.
Yeah, so want eyes with that, and then they'd have, like, little eyeballs. But that's creepy. No one wants their food looking at them. Like, I find it weird enough if someone eats, like, a piece of fish, and it's a whole fish with the eye on it. I'm like, nah, maybe don't.
I can just imagine how that would smell. Ugh.
And the next one I had was flesh in the pan.
Oh.
Like flash in the pan, you know?
Okay.
It's a little less creative. There's nothing, like, particularly specific about it other than, hey, it's flesh. So I'm not really sure what we would top that burger with. And the last one I came up with was purple people eater, and it would come with purple cabbage on it.
You could also dye the buns purple.
That's true.
You could dye everything purple.
Yeah. I don't know how well human flesh would take to purple dye, but we could give it a shot. Or, no, don't.
Or just don't. Yeah.
All right, so what was your idea for a burger?
Mine was the Corpse Bride.
Ooh, yes, a play on the movie Corpse Bride.
Is that it?
Yeah,
duh. Right.
Okay, so what would you put on your Corpse Bride burger?
Well,
Keeping in mind, you gotta, like, it's gotta be actual corpse.
I guess I didn't think that far ahead. I just like the name, the wordplay.
Okay. You like the wordplay. All right,
And I do like it because at the end of the episode, Bob is, he's promoting that he's proud that there's human flesh. So he's like, yeah, come on in, there's human flesh.
Okay, so imagine that he's serving the corpse pride to all of those adventurous eaters. He's charging $50, Jason. They gotta get their money's worth.
Maybe he's sticking a little flag with his logo on it.
What?
People that are proud of their country have, like, waving their flags.
Oh my god, corpse pride. Oh, terrible. Okay, but seriously. Alright, so, like, regular, like, bun. And then you've got your patty of human flesh. And then what? Are we just talking, like, lettuce, tomato, ketchup, mustard kind of vibe? Like, simple? Or are we talking something fancy? Because you're charging $50. You gotta come up with something good, Jason.
Charge him an arm and a leg?
Oh my god. Oh my god.
I'm here all night, folks.
Oh, woo! Terrible. Didn't you say the other day, I think you were telling me about it, and you said something like, we would put Flintstones gummies on there because they look
because
like
they're little people.
That's terrible. Don't charge $50 for that.
Okay, well, you wouldn't use Flintstone chewables because those are like vitamins.
Exactly.
So you could just use I guess you could just use Sour Patch Kids, so it'd kind of be a cross between Child Molester and the Corpse Pride. Because it would come with candy, but it would be little people candy.
That would be gross.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not worth $50.
No, but neither is a regular burger.
Neither is a regular burger, you're right. That brings us to the end of our first episode of Burger of the Week, a Multiverse radio production. If you like our show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes and follow us on Twitter at Multiverse Radio. You can also visit our website, multiverseradio.ca. See you next week with our review of Episode 2, Crawl Space. Keep on sizzling.
Oh my god. Oh my god.